I'm not saying blame Disney for all of it. I'm just saying blame Disney for some of it. All right, so before we begin, once again, I want to remind you, ignore the crooked calendar, this microphone, and this shadow behind me. You just won't go anywhere. So, I love Twitter. I stay in these Twitter streets. I stay in the Twitter streets. And recently on Twitter, there was a discussion being had that was inspired by the Shade Room, right? And so the Shade Room tweeted, I'm going to read it here. Why aren't marriages lasting like our grandparents' generation? Open discussion. Talk to me. And this was retweeted 180 times. It was quote tweeted 4,078 times, and it got 1,255 likes. This is a commonly asked question all the time. This comes up maybe once a month on various platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, no matter where you go. Why don't marriages last so long? Why don't marriages last so long, right? And these conversations usually end up in two categories. Two common responses. Matter of fact, as I'm looking at the first comment under it, it kind of gets into my point. At so misking. Pretty simple. Because women are no longer dependent on the income of a man due to not being allowed to join the workforce. They no longer have to tolerate being abused / cheated on / treated like property. They no longer need marriage for security. They have autonomy. So you get that perspective, or you get the other perspective, which is, this generation doesn't believe in love no more. That overly dramatic thing as well. Neither one of these, in my opinion, are actually honest. Well, no, I'm not gonna say that. These are two very extreme opinions, right? It's either grandpa used to beat the hell out of grandma back in the day, and women today don't have to put up with that on one side, or it's people don't love no more. That is too simplistic of a view on this. And so I decided to give my opinions on why marriages today don't last like they used to. And I, sat down on my phone and I got my little list together. And so here I am. And my first answer, I'm going to agree with Brother Man before. Women have financial and legal independence today, and they did not have that back in our grandparents' day. So we all know this, that there was a time in this country, I live in America, but this is true in pretty much every Western democracy that exists today, where women did not have autonomy. And so they needed a man to have a good life. They needed a man to have access to wealth, to own property. They needed a man for safety. Having a man was a necessity before. That is not the case now. In many respects, women out-earn and are outpacing their male counterparts, whether it's school graduation records. I believe women between the ages of, I think, 20 and 30 out-earn their male counterparts, right? So women today have access to much more independence and wealth than their grandmothers did, right? And so that's the finance part of it. They also have legal independence as well. So, for example, if I beat my wife in New York City, right? It doesn't matter if my wife wants to testify against me. If I beat my wife and the neighbors call the police and they come to my house and they see that she has bruises on her face, I'm going to jail, whether she wants to press charges on me or not. That was not true back in the day. And so there was no out when women got married. You kind of had to suffer through that marriage until you died. That is not the case in 2020. Women have legal independence as much as they have financial independence. Their grandmothers did not have that. And so that is a valid point that my man made earlier that I agree with, right? That's my first reason. Second reason, men aren't where they need to be economically. So most dudes today just don't have it like their fathers did. I'm not getting political, but when Trump ran on Make America Great Again, MAGA with the red hat, you would hear people who were, usually black say, well, what do you mean make America great again? Well, ironically enough, if you ask different people that question, you get different responses. But there was a time previously where America is viewed as being better economically than it is today, right? So one example is, and this is true for both black and white men of various races, you do not need to have the levels of education that you need to have today in order to attain a livable lifestyle. So a man can work at a factory with his hands, no education needed, straight out of high school, work for a company for 10 years, 15 years, and he could support a family. You can't do that today, right? You need significantly more education, more skills. It is a lot harder today to have the economic independence as a man to have a family. And even then, it's not like it was back in the day where the man worked and then the wife, in some communities could stay home and take care of the children in the household. Those days are over. In most cities today, most places in America, you need 2 incomes in order to live a comfortable life or anywhere near a comfortable life. And so because men are not where they are economically, they don't want to get married because for a lot of men, they tie their self-worth to how well they can provide. And so if you have a generation of men that are economically insecure, they are not going to want to get married, or when they do get married and things go wrong in their relationship, they hightail it out of there, first second they get, because they know that they can't really support their family. Or when things get rocky, their wife might be quicker to divorce them, because in today's climate, women kind of know that their husbands are not as economically secure as they were back in the day. So that's my second reason why marriages don't last. My third reason, the Disneyfication of love and romance. Now, I've been preaching about this for a long time. Now, obviously, you guys know when I say the Disneyfication, I'm talking about Disney. And Disney, it is not strictly Disney's fault. I'm using Disney as an example for a larger problem, which is these media companies and corporations, Disney and various movie companies that produce romance movies and book studios that publish romantic books and novels. What happened with relationships, love and romance became the backdrop to marriage instead of reasonable things like secure, stable household, a stable institution to raise children in, right? It's hard for us to think about it, but marriage was not discussed or looked at with these rose-colored glasses that we look at it today. So now we equate getting married if you love somebody. That wasn't the case in our grandparents' era. Now, it's not to say that some of them weren't in love with each other. I'm sure some of them were. But being honest, it was probably more likely that people were married to individuals that were not necessarily the love of their life. In fact, if I had to guess, many people got married knowing that they weren't marrying the love of their life. They were marrying the love that could provide. Or in the case of men, they were marrying the love that could give them children. And then let's try to be happy. That's less rosy, but it's more honest. Fourth reason, American culture today values work over family. So, one of the things that you notice when you read history books, there is a correlation between the family structure in America and what America needs at the time. For example, there was a time where families in America had huge families, like 6, 7, 8 kids. Reason why? We lived a more agricultural lifestyle. And so children, the reason why families have more children is because children were viewed as labor. I know, hard for us to think about today, but that's what it was back then. Children were labor. So the more children you had, the more helpers you had to work the farm, or if you had a pottery business, or if you were a blacksmith, the more children you had, the more help you had to run the land, the barn, your business, etc. That was the demand in America, and so the family structure mirrored what the American economy demanded. In today's American economy, they demand your undivided attention, flexibility, drop what you're doing at a dime to help the company. On call now, many jobs have schedules where your set schedule, but then you also have like 3 or 4 shifts where you're on call, which means they can kind of interrupt and take over your life whenever they want to. American values single people today more than they do people with marriages. The companies don't like people with obligations. They don't. And so when you get married, what usually happens, people have a hard time putting their family first because you need the money to support your family. But by chasing the money, you can, in fact, neglect your family. And so after going through that hamster wheel for a couple of years, the stress of it all breaks up a lot of marriages. And remember, both partners are playing this game. So it's not just the man on the hamster wheel, it is the man and his wife on the hamster wheel. Everyone in the house that is an adult is running this hamster wheel where you have to provide the company with all of these hours because they want you to be flexible, or depending on where you are, you kind of have to work all of these hours so that you can afford to even have family time. It breaks down the family. Reason number 5, online dating. Now, this was tricky for me to put in here because technically speaking, you could say that online dating actually makes it harder for people to get married and not necessarily an explanation as to why marriages today don't last. But online dating today impacts you whether you use it or not. You don't have to be on Tinder for you to be affected by Tinder. We all know, whether we're on these apps or not, that our dating pool is significantly larger today than it was back in the day. Most people would marry people in a neighborhood. Or if you went to college, you'd marry somebody you went to school with. It was not that hard to find somebody to marry because the pool was small, the culture demanded for you to get married, and we have natural urges like sex. And so people at a young age were very eager to get married. Today, that's not the case. You have these dating apps, Tinder. You can swipe. Depending on where you live, I live in New York City, you have literally thousands of options of women to choose from. So if you're a man and you get married to a woman, right? You guys can get into a relationship, you're married for a year or two. Every time there's a bump in the road, you know in the back of your mind, I don't really have to put up with this, right? There's somebody else out there. Add on top of that if you're somebody like me who doesn't believe in the one and only, myth, like I don't believe that there is one person destined for you. There's 6 billion people on the planet. That means we all probably have, 500,000 possible matches. So I don't believe in the, oh my God, you're my one and only. But if you do believe that, so if you don't believe that, right, you don't believe in the one and only myth, you hit a rough patch in your marriage, in the back of your mind, you got thousands of options, literally a download on a phone away. Download it on a phone away. Kind of makes it hard for you to fight for your marriage, but you know that's in the back of your head. That's what I mean when I say dating apps play a role. The 6th reason why marriages don't last as long today, we live longer. I don't have to take that much time explaining this. It is different signing up for marriage when you think you got 20 years left to live. But as life expectancy has grown each generation, though I think for like the past 3 or 4 years, the life expectancy actually went down instead of up. But you get what I'm saying. Look, man, now that life expectancy is longer, it's different when if I got to marry this person and I'm only going to be with them for 20 years versus now, do I want to be with the same person, have sex with the same person for the next 40 years of my life? That last point might be a little bit off base there. But look, my main point, marriages don't last today because there's not that much of a reason for people to get married anymore. Those are my reasons. Let me know if you agree, disagree down below. Until next time, deuces.